It's good to be with all of you here as part of this online program that we're offering as part of the 6th edition of the SAFAR Film Festival. The online program is very different from the physical program, and I wanted to conceive something as all of you are watching from homes. So we thought, why not discuss as part of this theme, which is on generational encounters in Arab cinema, why can't we discuss what home is? What do you feel home could be for you, but also for our filmmaking guests who are with us? As Amani said, we have an invitation for 3 filmmakers. Their films are very much related on the notion of home, on the notion of shooting very close family members. The first one is a Syrian documentary called Sugar Cage, which is a film by Zeina Kahwaji. Zeina cannot unfortunately be with us, as Amani said, but Zeina made a very specific film actually to record her life over the course of 8 years since the civil unrest in Syria. And through her film, she managed to rediscover not just her own home, but also her family with her parents, her relationship to both of her parents. Next to that, we have a Lebanese documentary called Room for a Man, which is a film from 2017 by Anthony Chidiac, whom we have the pleasure to have with us. Anthony is looking for so many answers in that film. We're going to ask him about that, but also we discover his very intricate relationship with his mother, but also with other people who come and invade his own bedroom, actually. Anthony is a filmmaker who was born in Beirut in 1988. He has studied in Lebanon. He did several short films and also did a medium-length fiction film, Maman No Merci, which has really toured tremendously. And Room for a Man is his first feature documentary, has screened all over the planet, has also won a major award in Montreal, and we're very happy to have Anthony with us. Thank you, Anthony, for being with us. And next to Anthony, we also have another filmmaker from Lebanon who has done an equally challenging documentary, but with different challenges. Cyril Aris is a filmmaker from Lebanon. He has shot The Swing some years ago, and The Swing is this very particular personal journey that he undertakes with his grandparents, but also with his family, and through that we discover his own home, actually. Cyril was practically a one-man show on that film. He has written, shot, edited, produced the film, and then the film had its world premiere at the Karlovy Vary Film Festival before making audience sweep worldwide all over the planet. Thank you so much, Cyril, for being with us. And I would like to start with both of you. This panel is really conceived around the notion of home. So let's start with you, Cyril. You decided to have a particular journey with your grandparents, but also many parts of your family connect in that film. How was it for you to just rediscover these people and also bring them forward to shoot this story? I mean, it's very difficult. You're shooting a documentary, of course, but how was it for you to just make them embark on this very singular journey?
It's a bit ironic that that you're saying, you know, how was it for you to rediscover, you know, your grandparents through the lens? Because as I was filming the film, I realized that actually I did not know my grandparents. You know, I mean, we know our grandparents from family events. We know them from, you know, on a very superficial level, but we don't really know them on a day-to-day basis. So, you know, spending all of this time with them, you know, waking up and having breakfast with them, spending the whole day until they went to sleep, we get to really, you know, get to know them on the daily life and really delve through their thoughts and their mindset. Now, of course, because of their age, their mindset was very much contingent on the, you know, being at the finish line and looking back at their lives and trying to reminisce on that. And also kind of reflecting on the state of the country, because I think that this generation has been through the most, you know, being born in the 20s, they really are the history of Lebanon, because Lebanon is only 100 years old. So they've really witnessed all of these events. So experiencing, this, these social events and, their experience of these social events really made me, first of all, get to know them, but also get to know what it felt like to live through all of these historical events or these historical milestones of Lebanon.
I would like to, for the people who have seen the films, maybe we can refresh your minds with some photos of Cyril's film. And for those who have not seen the film, I will ask my colleague Amani to share the trailer of The Swing with you.
Sorry, can you see?
Yeah.
My bad, I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. Forgive me. There's a reason why we rehearsed this before doing it. And of course,
if it's complicated.
Here we go.
Okay.
ايه أنطوان خبرني شيء
أنا بدي أخبرك.
إيه
أنا شايفتك أخباري شو هنيك تخت الكرسي.
وأنا مثلك تقريبا.
قديش الشهر عندنا اليوم؟
2
أي شهر؟
جانفيي.
جانفيي.
الأيام تمرق وبتاخدنا معها. Bianca tu sei quel sole, Bianca, e le stelle le più belle non son belle al par di te.
ما بقى تخبر حدا شو هيدا؟ أنا جيت لا بلو بيل روح اسكت.
C'est connu. Les gens disaient qu'il a épousé la plus belle fille de Beyrouth.
منيح اللي بعدك فطنان، أنا مني فطنانة عشي.
عندك أخبار عن ماري تيريز؟
ما قلت لك راحي يا حبل برا بأمريكا مدري وين؟
راحي بأمريكا؟
إيه.
دولة بالسفر؟
بركي شوي
قديش؟
مش كتير.
حكيتي علينا هي بسنة ليك. مشتاق على ماري تيريز، صار لها صغير منا هون. ما بعرف كيف حالها.
Je crois qu'il ne supporterait pas. Il ne voudra plus vivre. Son cœur, il est à 25%.
هلا أنطوان بدمي يقول لي إمتى رح ترجع. كل يوم بيقول لي إمتى رح تجي. خلاص.
So that was some scenes in the trailer of The Swing by Cyril Aris. I will move to you, Anthony. You do this very specific story, which is actually your story. So this is an even more personal documentary because you're really up and close with the camera, but also with everyone who sees your film. But I wanted to talk about the second character of your film, who's not you, but also who's your mother. How was it to shoot something with your mother, actually, to bring her on screen and to give her so much space in the film, because she's an integral part of your life, but also of your film?
First, hi, everyone. I think that's the easiest part of the film because I live with my mother since ever. I live with my mother. We live together, only us, since ever. So we are alone in the house every day, and she's used to see this little boy playing with the camera every day, and she likes to be on camera actually. So it all started way before the start of the film. I always shot her to try the camera. She was always like my draft for everything. Even though we are not in a very good relationship, but whenever there's the camera in between us, there's something else because she likes to be in front of the camera. So I used somehow that thing. So for the film, actually, she wasn't taking things seriously because she never believed that I'm going to have a film, like a film published publicly. So that's what made it easy, actually.
I will ask Amani also to show us some images from Anthony's film. The trailer that we have is not subtitled, but actually we can just tell you the couple of lines that are in the film right after the trailer.
يلا عمول فيلم عن هالموضوع.
فيلم؟ ما حدا بيعرف فيه.
لا لي مع هدول الأهل طالع من البلد كله. هي مشكلتنا، بس انت ليش بدك تسافر؟
Oui ma chérie, tout va bien, parce qu'on vit dans l'encombrement total.
J'ai 25 ans. Je ne suis ni enfant, ni adulte, ni homme, ni femme, ni prince, ni démon. Personne à qui me raccrocher, ni rien.
Just a couple of things about the voiceover that you heard at the very end of Anthony's clip. It says that I am 25 years old. I am not a child and not an adult. I am neither a man nor a woman, neither a prince nor a demon. I have nobody to hold on to. I have nothing. And with that, I will ask you directly, Anthony. This was the voiceover that runs throughout the film, actually. You used it with actually it's a woman that speaks the voiceover in the film. Was it a conscious decision to, what made you make this choice, actually?
The woman's voice or the voice?
Yeah,
the woman's voice.
The woman's voice, and also the choice of having voiceover to tell the story.
Okay, first, people don't know me, but who know me personally know that I'm not very talkative. I speak with my actions. I speak with things that are visual, and since the film is very representative of who I am, it had to take my choices were part of the language I wanted to communicate. So I was always in search during the editing of what is the best way to communicate what I want to say. Not very direct, because I cannot be that direct. So I want to be present, but I wanted to find my ways. So the voice of the woman actually was one of the ways that I chose, because if you watch the film, you can tell why I chose the woman, because the gender identity is part of many layers of the films, part of many layers of the home identity, of the belonging to the body, to everything that makes you live. So I couldn't say it in the voice that I have today. So I chose the alternative voice that maybe I wanted to have in another life.
And this brings me to you, Cyril. Your voice is also very present in the film, and you are also an essential character in the story in the end. Even though you have all of these protagonists around you, you are the one who is orchestrating everything, basically. How was it for your family to really accept that you are not Cyril, the grandson or the son or whoever you are, but also you are someone behind the camera who's moving around the whole family members and shooting them, actually? Was there a difference between, for the family, that you are Cyril, the family member, or that you are Cyril, the filmmaker?
Well, I think it's a little like Anthony in the beginning, they don't really see this as like a serious film. You know, it's like, oh, okay, he's, you know, shooting around with a camera, great. You know, for them initially they saw it as, oh, great, he's spending time with you know, with the grandparents, you know, which is great because we don't get to spend a lot of time with them because everyone has their own lives. So, you know, in the beginning, they saw it as great, you know, go ahead and spend time with them. So, so initially, I don't think they really understood what I was really going for, except maybe for the couple of family members that I questioned directly, since we're dealing with that dramatic question of whether or not we should tell my grandfather that his daughter passed away. And because this stirred up a bit of a debate in the family, and reached the decision of not telling him and allowing him to just go with a smile. The mere fact that I was, you know, questioning some of these characters, I think they started to understand what, you know, what I was going for. But the general atmosphere wasn't to take the film very seriously, which was great because for me it allowed me to really, you know, infiltrate the intimacy, not just as a grandson but as an observer. So that helped a lot. Now, when the movie was shot and done and edited, and I showed them the film, then it hit them a bit more, you know, with that debatable question, and they also, you know, started wondering whether they would like to see this, you know, this film go public or not, because, you know, to this day we still don't know if it was the right decision to tell him, not to tell him. But I think that, you know, a bit like me, the way they see it is that it's also a testament of the love story between my grandfather and my grandmother, you know, 65 years of marriage, and to my opinion, one of the greatest love stories that I will ever witness, because it's so real and genuine. It's you know, it's not like the fairy tales. So I think when they saw that aspect of the film, they were fine with just, you know, letting go of the film and allowing audiences to have their own opinions on it.
It's very funny because you mentioned secrets, and in both of your films there are so many secrets. But I wanted
it's the Arab culture.
It's the Arab culture, yes, but also, I mean, within the same household. And I wanted to go to Anthony actually, because you mentioned something that I found very interesting actually, the notion of home actually, what you want to unveil at home and what you want to keep secret from the other people who live in this household. I mean, you mentioned that you only live with your mother, and I wanted to ask you, what does home represent for you? What do you feel home is?
No, I'm gonna start about the secret part, because now after 5 years of doing the film, and I have a lot of distance, but back then I was so into it. I was living the things, I was living in the house. I was overstressed about my own life and my surrounding and the film and everything, so I didn't have the distance to see it from afar. Now I really understand what my mother was fearful about the film, because she always say that keep things inside the house. You don't have to publish your secrets, your dirty things, nobody has to know what you feel, what you know, what you think. Keep close. There's a saying in Arabic, ما تفتح عليك بواب مغلقة. How do you say it?
Yeah, don't try to open closed doors. Yeah.
So I started the film with an open door, but it was my own room's door. I wasn't. It's a very critical thing, because you have to respect the house you live in, because it's not yours, it's your mother's life. She made it. She has her own rules. You have to respect it. But at the same time, you have your room. And I took over my room and I thought, this is my space. And I'm free to do what I can do. And this is how the film, and why the film is called Room for a Man, why it happens inside the room, because this is the only space I can take the decision to speak for myself and say what I want to say free.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no. what was home?
Let's keep the home part, because I'm also interested to understand Cyril's opinion on secrets. Actually, you took the decision to hide such a big secret, and you all played along, except for your grandfather, who didn't have any clue. And basically the whole film is around that secret, more or less. Did that decision take place during the shooting of the film? How did that evolve?
Well, so when my aunt passed away, it was already difficult enough to announce to my grandmother. So it took them maybe a week, because in my family, and I think this is quite typical of all Lebanese families and Arab families in general, is that everyone's trying to protect the other. And the concept of a white lie is, I think, very prevalent, because you're doing this out of love, you're doing this out of protection. So in a way, you can easily justify your lie by saying, but I'm doing this out of love because I'm trying to protect him. In the particular case of my grandfather, it's just because medically speaking, taking an emotional shock would just present a risk of him completely passing away. So they were trying to extend his life by just a little, just a few months, and not let him suffer through the end. So I completely understood the secret, but I wasn't entirely comfortable with it. Ethically speaking, like, can you hide from a family member the death of their own child? And I think that having that question mark propelled me into the film. So the decision was taken shortly after her death, and obviously I wasn't part of it, but when I learned about it, I just wanted to explore how far you can extend this lie and try to find an answer, whether we're allowed, ethically speaking, to do something like that. And the characters themselves keep questioning that. So it's not that they took the decision and were very comfortable with it, but all along the film, they're wondering if they're doing the right thing, or if they're not doing the right thing. And I think by the end of it, when you get to the end, I think you can make your own opinion, but I think that that secret took a huge toll on my grandmother. So when you're trying to protect one, you're involuntarily punishing the other. But I think that's why I said before that for me it's a love story, and it's a great love story because it's built on that sacrifice. But it's a very unspoken sacrifice that was not apparent to anyone in my family until they saw the film and they realized how much my grandmother took on her shoulders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Let's go back to Anthony and the notion of home. Actually, we were just discussing, part of what both of you are saying are very intimate things and things that are happening in this household. Is home for you a physical space, Anthony, or do the people of the space feel like home for you? What is home for you?
I don't think I can answer that. I think particularly for myself, home has always been an ongoing question, and during the film might not have answered fully what is home, because I think it's beyond the word and beyond the value of it, or the original value of what is home and what we have thought it should be. Because we all grew up with certain values. I think we all have the same value of what is a traditional home, what is family, what is being safe, what is being living the happy life of a normal home, which was not my case personally. And since I was a child, I always had questions about everything, and everything is a household from the home. And growing up as a teenager and becoming a filmmaker, the questions have become much more deeper, much more dramatic, and much more hysterical, existential, whatever you want. So I lost all definitions, and and home has become like very split. Sorry for being dramatic.
No, but actually, I mean, it's very interesting because every person has a complete different idea of what home is. And I mean, also both of your films, both are Lebanese documentaries that show complete different perspectives on not just what home is, but what a home can contain.
I want to sum it up, like now today, I think I did not find home, unfortunately, but I think it's the space where you are safe.
Mm-hmm. And it takes me actually to Cyril, because many of us really believe that the home of our grandparents is a safe space or is a safe place. And many of us wanted to be there or actually hated being there. I wanted to ask you, Cyril, how was it for you to just be at your grandparents' and then shooting what you called at the end? I mean, they were at the end of their lives, basically. How was it for you to accompany that process, being at that place over a period of time, sometimes very regularly? And do you consider that space to be home?
So again, that's a very complicated question, I think. And, you know, I want to echo Anthony in that. It's very hard to define home. I mean, I definitely see my grandfather's physical home as part of home, of course. You know, because for me, it's not just a space, but it's, of course, it's like the couch she sits on when she speaks on the phone. It's like the couch she sits on when she's, you know, letting her feelings out. It's the spot where he sits on the balcony because he has a nice view, you know. So I think that this home automatically has an emotional value, and obviously that's why I end the film with just these spaces, because they mean more than just a space. And I think the question is, am I attached to the space itself, or am I attached to the people who were living in that space? I've always wondered, if I take all the people, like friends and family and all the people I love, if I take them out of Lebanon and I put them in a random place, would I still have an attachment to Lebanon? And I think it's very, very hard to answer that. I can quote, for example, Elia Suleiman. You know, in his first feature film, he dedicated his film to both of his parents, the next one to his father, and the next one to his mother. So, you know, people were curious what was going to be his fourth film about. And having had a conversation with him, he told me, well, I have nothing left because I don't have my parents anymore, so I have nothing left. So I guess my film will be about that, about not belonging anywhere, but at the same time belonging a bit everywhere. And yeah, so you know, the concept of home is definitely a complicated, you know, question to answer, but definitely filming them grew some attachment to the notion of home being embedded in the physical space of Lebanon, of course, because they stayed in Lebanon out of love for Lebanon, and their children did the same. For my generation, it's a bit more complicated. You know, you can see the three of us, Anthony and Rabia and myself, are currently not in Lebanon, but we always go back somehow. So yeah, I really don't know what it is that always brings us back if we were to remove the people we loved.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, it's very moving you say that, because I wanted actually to take you to ask a question about shooting in our home spaces in Lebanon, actually. But before I do that, I can ask our audience if they have some questions for our guest. Now is the time for you to start preparing them so that we can launch a small discussion through your questions. But I will go to you, Anthony, and ask, you have left Lebanon. You said some years ago, actually, a couple of years ago. And I wanted to ask you, how do you look back actually at this place, which was for you somehow home without it necessarily being home? How do you reflect on the time that you've spent outside? What kind of memories is that space for you now?
Just it happened only 2 years ago. It's not like I emigrated 20 years ago. So the memory is still there, of course. The moving out was something I always wanted to, and it was clearly said in the film. And it happened, dramatically. The decision was taken during the period where Lebanon was starting to collapse. Now it's, we can say, officially collapsed or not.
It can collapse more. It can collapse more than that. Brace yourself.
So it was really hard. I was really happy to be moving, but at the same time, I was going to nowhere. I was not going to another home or to a safe place. So I'm always in a state of looking for what's next, to a very blurry destiny. And I do miss home, yes, if this is what you're expecting me to say. Sorry, you're looking at me. Rabih, are you there? Rabih?
I think I have now connection problems. Maybe we spoke about Lebanon and my connection decided to distort. My
Your connection is very Lebanese now.
Yeah.
Because Iran has the difficulty.
We lost you, Rabih. Can you repeat your question?
I don't know if my... I say, no, I didn't need to say. Many people have a very strong relationship to it. Many people really hate everything about it. And it's very interesting when people speak about their own homeland, what kind of feelings come to. There is longing feeling, but also there is complete rejection. For you, Cyril, who are really shooting different projects at the moment, you have to travel every now and then. You do so much outside, but in the end, you always come back to Lebanon. How is it for you to feel, to be there, but also not be there, to witness things there, but also not witnessing the right things there? What's your current relationship with your home country?
So, again, of course, very complex, but, I'm working on like 2-3 different projects now, and they're all set in Lebanon, whether it's a documentary or fiction. So it seems that, my heart is still there and my pain is still there. And that's why I still, tackle subjects that are related to Lebanon and Lebanese culture. And I'm still not doing, anything of, emotional value outside of Lebanon. But I think maybe it's because I still have hope in that place. So like, that's why I still tackle questions that are related to Lebanese identity and Lebanese culture. I'm not entirely sure why every time I have an idea for a project, it's always back home and always set in Beirut. And I think that, when some people reject it completely, I think it's also out of protection, because we are born with this toxic love for our city. And, I say toxic because everyone loves it deeply, but at the same time, it gets destroyed over and over and over again, whether physically or metaphorically. So I think even people who reject it completely, it's out of an intense love and out of protection, because, when I go, for example, to the US and I see other types of immigrants, they have this indifferent relationship to their homes and they almost don't really care. especially if it's people coming from European countries, there's, this kind of like, disconnect. Of course, I'm generalizing, but, I've noticed that as opposed to like Lebanese people who stay connected and who, they keep in touch with family and friends and the news and stuff. Not everyone, of course. That's why you have, sometimes this intense rejection, but there is this very, very toxic love-hate relationship that we all have for our land.
It's very interesting that you mentioned that, actually, because we've been talking about home. Our program in London has been a program on generations, actually. And I wanted actually to end my prepared questions with kind of a generational question. Of course, Anthony mentioned the collapse of the country. You mentioned your really vital relationship with Lebanon, disregarding whether you want to be there, you want to shape your stories there. I wanted to ask both of you, actually. I will start with you, Anthony. On your film really speaks not just about home, but also speaks about identity. Identity, belonging, all of these topics. You, of course, mentioned also that you had a very difficult relationship with your mother, which has never been easy. Do you feel that the upcoming generations have a different understanding of belonging, of identity, of sexual identity, of framing oneself in a complete, open and different way? And I mean that in Lebanon. Do you see that, actually?
Of course, I see it. It's not something about, I think, identity crisis has been going since ever. No, it's not something that varies between a generation or not. It's like part of life, part of, it depends on where you were born, your surrounding, and this is part of life, I think. Currently seeing, if you mean what's happening in Lebanon, you mean this generation of today, of course, and naturally, of course, if people will be definitely split into million parts between dreaming of living the country, or people who are already moved and who have parents there. Everything will be worse.
And I finish with you, Cyril, on the notion of generations. Actually, your film speaks about so many layers of generations. And you mentioned actually that your grandparents were born in the 20s. So, and Anthony now just mentioned all the hardships that one goes through when one person might want to decide to leave the country, actually. How was it for you to spend time with your grandparents, discovering all this history of the country, all the things that the country has been through? And now, of course, the country is going into a direction that the country has never seen before, even though the country has lived so many wars. And I wanted to ask you, how much is it important to keep part of this generational heritage, actually, in understanding our past to relate to our future?
Well, I think it's very important. I think if we truly understood our past, but like really understood our past, we wouldn't be doing the same mistakes, because my main takeaway is that it's a completely cyclical nature of living in Lebanon and being faced with adversities and conflicts and crisis, and having the family torn apart out of necessity, because you have to have someone outside of the country to support the ones who decide to stay back home. And I think this has never been as true as it is now, because now it's almost inconceivable for a family to just survive and meet their basic needs unless they have some foreign currencies coming from abroad. When you talk about like an inflation in the 3 digits and a devaluation of 90% of the currency, and salaries are more or less unchanged, salaries in the local currency, then it's almost inconceivable. So having seeing that they experienced that their family was kind of spread out in the world. And the generation of my father was also the same. I mean, him and his brothers and his sisters, they're kind of like all over. Some are in Europe, some are back home. And my generation has also the same. And you know, especially after the August 4th explosion, I think there's been, you know, such a big spike in immigration and visa applications, because it's really the trauma of a generation, I think, of our generation was this explosion. So it seems that there's this constant cyclical nature that repeats itself, and the only thing that really stays the same is the nature of politics. You know, you know, not just metaphorically, but also the same faces. You know, since since the 70s, it's like the same criminals that are ruling over us. So I guess, you know, that was my main takeaway of seeing three generations having the same story being told. And I really hope by the time I get their age that I won't be telling the same story. But I seem to be going on that path. So that's pretty sad.
No, we'll just hope that the country will take a different path and we don't have the same faces, at least also not the same faces, but also not the same generation of faces, let's put it this way, because if it's not the father, it's the son or the daughter or the uncle or whoever. This is not the Arab generations that we want to discuss. But coming from that, there is a question actually from Becky, who's asking both of you actually, since both of you are very, very personal films. Becky is asking if you were going to give an advice to a filmmaker who's considering making a documentary about their family. Would you have any advice to give him, her, or them? What would you say? I don't know who would like to answer this, either you, Cyril, or Anthony.
I don't like to give advices personally, especially for a filmmaker, because everyone has to find his own way of doing what he wants to do. So an advice, if he needed it, he could ask for it, but
no, yeah, I second that, because, you know, there's such personal films that they become case by case. So, you know, it's not like you're going into shooting a fiction that's a co-production between France, Germany, and Lebanon. And my advice is that you know, so it's no, I think it's such a case by case. I mean, it's the characters themselves that dictate the style and not necessarily, or the process, and not necessarily, you know, I wouldn't say there's a standard process that we could give advice on in order to get, you know, genuine performances, you know, between quotation performances from the characters. It's very much dependent on the characters themselves.
I could add something. Maybe if it's a personal, very personal film, you need someone to be on your side, maybe a producer or someone to keep you a little bit of, to bring you a little bit of distance, maybe, and to not drive yourself too much into what you live, because it's very hard to be very fusional with the film and your personal life. In the end, it's going to be a film. So there's always, you should always be aware of this in-between thing between the film and your own life.
We have a couple of questions. I will start with a question to Anthony from Diana. She's asking you, how do you navigate holding your identity that is not accepted where you live and doing your work as a filmmaker in a way that is true to both your identity and what you want to explore in your work?
Identity, which identity? Sexual identity?
I think she means your sexual identity, because she means that is not accepted where you live.
It's not accepted by the law, yes, but it was never a direct problem for me to live, because I always been, when I first came up, I was very free and comfortable with myself. That was not the problem. I could cope with it because back then I think I had the much more stronger personality because I was not very much aware of many things in life. I was not that sensitive and that sensible about things. But growing up has, I don't know why, but things has become much more hard. I became much more harder on myself, and I started to put more boundaries on myself, on the contrary of, so I think I am the problem. I am my own enemy at some point, because I always fought what the others wanted me to be. Like if my mother didn't like my sexuality, or my uncle didn't like it, or whoever is around me, it was not a direct problem. It affected me, of course, because I preferred it was the other way around, because the attitude towards you changes, even though they don't say it directly, but the way they look at you, the way they belittle you, it affects you since you are young and until you become 60 years old, because they will be dead already. I lost the question.
It's interesting, Anthony, because in your previous comment, you mentioned that it would be to have a bit of distance to to your own story, but also to the film you are making. And I wanted to reflect on that because also we have a question about obstacles, and I would ask Cyril on that, because Cyril, you did so many things on the swing. Actually, you really had so many hats. Was it important for you to have a producer on the film, on the swing, or did you feel comfortable doing that yourself? And also, I would like to ask you to answer the question that we have. What kind of challenges was it that you faced while doing the swing?
Having a producer, I think in the particular case of the swing, wouldn't have been extremely helpful because, logistically speaking and financially speaking, it's a very cheap film to make. It's just me filming my grandparents, and it happened on such an impulse that I didn't really have time to go ahead and scout, for a producer and then go into development and financing. I just had to shoot now because the time was so limited, and it was very sensitive. It was very time sensitive. I needed to capture it on the go. However, in post-production, I really relied on the outside perspective, or the perspective of someone outside of the project. And, that's why I was working closely with another filmmaker, Munya Haed. I work closely with her in all projects, but in this one in particular, because she knows me well and she knows a bit, my family, but she has enough distance that she can tell me, this is a scene that only you care about, or this is a scene that you think is not significant, but it's actually very telling. So, having a bit of that guidance from someone close and someone you trust can really put things, back in perspective, because like Anthony was saying, sometimes you kind of drown in your own material because you're so attached, and you're attached to the characters and not necessarily the material, so that gets very muddy. So I would say, this was the main obstacle, and this is where I needed the most help. And I was, bouncing the cut of 4 or 5 people that also I trust deeply. So, testing out what really mattered to me, but wouldn't matter to an audience, and vice versa.
And I will also ask you, Anthony, you had a producer, you had a fantastic producer who was on board. What kind of obstacles did you encounter while shooting the film? Were there obstacles that were during the film, or were there obstacles that were more in post-production of the film?
I think I was lucky to have Carol on board, Carol Aboud, who without her, she pushed me to do the film, because the film was only an idea, thoughts, because she's my friend and we were close. and she knows me personally. And I think she found herself in the film. She had the same, of course, she's a woman, she has another life, but whatever I would say to her, she would perfectly understand it, because in some way or another, she was living the same questions and she had the same questions. So she was there on every single thing. She did not, I shot the film on my own. I edited, I did everything on the ground because it's me. I don't remember any big problems, honestly, because I had all the time I wanted to finish the film. I was editing on my own rhythm, so there was no pressure. And Carol was a fantastic person, and she managed to make everything possible.
Wow, it's really nice. I mean, it's just lovely to have a producer who's always there for you and who gives you your time. I mean, sometimes you're like, no, we have to finish the film before this festival and we want to submit and we want to do that.
I'm quick. Actually, I'm quick.
But with that, I really want to thank both of you for your time, also from joining us, not necessarily from your homes, but from somewhere where maybe a space that we can call home, basically. And I wanted also to mention that both of your films although they have been finished a while ago, whether we like it or not, they speak a lot about the current condition of Lebanon. They unveil facets of our country that, I mean, we really think that this is a story that is happening in Anthony's home or in Cyril's home or in Zena's home as well. And then with time, when we look over these films, we really rediscover our countries, our societies, and also all the hardships that both Lebanon and Syria are going through at the moment. I would like to thank you for the time that you've had with us today, but also I would like to thank you for sharing very personal stories, not just with us, but also for the whole planet to see. And I would like to wish you a lot of success with telling us your forthcoming stories. I know Anthony is now taking a rest from filmmaking, I think, but I know Cyril has millions of projects that he's currently working on, and not necessarily documentary. You're also doing fiction, Cyril, as well. Yeah. But disregarding whether it's documentary or was it fiction, we really like to always see talented emerging filmmakers telling us very personal stories, but also very intimate and stories that could speak to you as filmmakers, but also that could speak to many of the viewers who would really identify with the stories. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, thanks a lot.
And Anthony, and also for the rest of you who are watching us, thank you for being with us. We have the films of Zena, of Cyril, and of Anthony are viewable all over the UK until this coming Saturday at midnight, so you can have the chance to see them. And we will have a final talk, the final SAFAR talk actually will be held this coming Saturday with Algerian filmmaker Karim Sayad. And Karim is also questioning the notion of belonging on the larger scope through his documentary, My English Cousin, which is also playing as part of our online program. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening wherever your home is, and we hope to see you here or there sometime soon. Ciao.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.